My name is Savan Pillay. I'm the CEO of Zero Gravity TV and Media. And with me, I have Vito Macchiano from Rushlake.
Hello, nice to meet
Here.
you.
And Lala Tuku from the SABC. So welcome. We are waiting for Monday and Shirley. As they do come in, we'll get them mic'd up and get them onto the stage, so hopefully we can shed a lot more light. Okay, so today's topic is what does Africa want, or what Africa wants. Now, it's a very complex question. It's not an easy one for everybody to answer. There's multiple layers to the content business and the broadcasting business. There are also multiple challenges in the market currently for content creators, for producers, distributors, and platforms alike. And I'm sure many of you out there have lots of questions in terms of how do we get our great ideas onto the TV screens, how do we get it sold, how do we get it produced. And hopefully the panel that we have here, they all have a lot of experience in different areas. We'll be able to unpack that for you today. So first of all, welcome to Lala and welcome to Vito. Lala, we'll start with you. Just very quickly, if you can give the team or the people here today indication of what your role is at the SABC currently, what your core focus is.
Awesome. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Lala Tuku, and it's such a pleasure to be here and to be speaking with you. The SABC, what do I do? So I'm head of content, first and foremostly. Head of content that's on all our platforms. But since February, I've had the pleasure of acting group executive for video entertainment. Can you hear me clearly at the back? Hey, clearly, perfect. And since February, I'm of heading up video entertainment, which is really television in its fullness. So that is really the strategic thrust of our content on multiple platforms. So that's 1, 2, 3. Education, we've got sports as well, and SABC Plus.
Thanks, Lala. And then Vito, Rushlake. Tell us about Rushlake and what does Rushlake do and how is it important for the African continent?
Exactly. So my name is Vito Macchiano from Rushlake Media. We are an international distribution company focusing on African content, and we are based between Germany and Kenya. So the reason that's why it's like 10 years ago we went to a private screening and we saw a film from Kenya which was beautiful and the filmmaker was attending, and just we had a spontaneous idea to ask him, well, what you're doing with the film in Germany, do you have any distribution? I said no. And we thought, yeah, that's a kind of a pity because it was a beautiful film and it was like, there's a large African diaspora in Germany and they didn't have the chance to, to watch this kind of films. And then we thought, like, let's do it ourselves. Let's give it a try. We relatively easy found out that, well, we are like 3 German white dudes. It's maybe not the smartest idea, like to try to sell African films. Maybe we need to, some people on the ground. And since the first film was from Kenya, that's where we basically started to hire people there. And this over the year grow into this like pan-European African company. And yeah, we're not doing only Germany, but also we like expanded to like worldwide, all platforms.
Okay, so in summary, you are an international company representing rights from Africa internationally.
Exactly.
By opportunity, right? That's how it was created.
Exactly.
Very interesting, Vito. Coming back to you, Lala, in terms of one of the most difficult things for any content creator coming to any platform is how do they shape their editorial? Because I know creators, I'm a creator too, people come up with great, wonderful ideas, but they're all not always applicable or malleable for a broadcaster. What is the SABC's current editorial focus in terms of where's the sweet spot for content creators?
That's a very interesting question. I think for all of us, well, importantly, SABC is our national broadcaster. Our focus editorial is really, I think the mic keeps dipping in and out. Should we take a second just to fix it? Much better. Okay.
Much better, Lala.
SABC is the national broadcaster, and our editorial focus, Savannah, I think it's an important question. Our editorial focus is mandate-driven. So we exist to maintain, to preserve, to really make sure that our South African identity, our South African identity through universal access can really reflect our diversity, our plurality of voices. We are hyper-local. We are hyper-local, we're very nuanced, and the stories that our audiences gravitate to are those that are, I must say, where we get our biggest numbers is our hyper-local stories. So we want to reflect our nation in all its diversity, and to make sure that, we can reflect our cultures, our language. One of our unique selling points is really around language as well. So it's really around the cohesion of our nation. It's a nation-building national platform.
Yeah. Something interesting on that. You and I had a conversation a few months ago at another festival where Lala presented some interesting numbers. One particular number was the underrepresentation of producers in other provinces outside of Gauteng, the Cape, and the opportunities. And just in terms of mandate, Lala, what opportunity does it create for those producers lying in other provinces?
We really believe that we've got to tell our own stories. So if we're going to have a story that's going to be set in Mpumalanga, we are really looking for producers that come from Mpumalanga and writers. So equally as if we're telling stories, female-centered stories, we're really intentional that the writers, the producers are also female, so that from a POV, we can really start to have nuanced storytelling. And that's really what's important. We have to make sure culturally we are represented. And what's important is that we are not homogeneous. So even families are even no longer the same. So we've got to even start moving from just purely Afrikaans content, if I may say. And we have to start being innovative in terms of how we showcase our society.
Thanks, Lala. Just for introduction, Shirley's just joined us. This is Shirley Adenisi. She's the Director of Local Entertainment for channels at MultiChoice. And very similar to Lala, but on a different platform, on a pay TV platform. Welcome, Shirley.
Thank you, Savan.
Just by introduction, Shirley, just give us an idea in terms of what the core parts of your role is at MultiChoice in terms of local.
So I am, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry that I was late. So I look after the local channels for MultiChoice, being Mzansi Magic, Mzansi Wetu, Mzansi Bioscope, Channel O, Mzansi Magic Music. And really what we do is very similar to the SABC mandate, is give entertainment to our middle and mass market. We produce telenovelas, we produce reality shows, we produce some original content for the music channels. So it's really a wide array of genre of content that we produce that speaks specifically to that market.
Thanks, Shirley. Just a follow-up question on that. And sometimes producers don't always have access to this type of data or knowledge. And I think this is a good forum to share some of that, to give them an idea. One of the questions people always ask, what are the key parameters that MultiChoice use to commission, right? And I'll be more specific with it. What have you seen in the difference between international ratings or international show ratings on your channels versus local show ratings on your channels? Maybe just, not without the exact numbers, but give people an idea of the trend.
I think it's a very easy question for us because our USP is the local content. The international content plays a role in terms of broadening the scope of our audiences, but essentially they want to see themselves on TV, they want to see their culture on TV, they want to see relatable characters. And what happens globally then informs their hopes, their dreams, their wishes, and what they can also pursue. So there's a place for international content, but the number one for us will always be the local content because that affinity is what keeps MultiChoice unique, and that's why we call ourselves an African company that tells African stories. And we may work with international formats, but we will always customize it to our market. It's not a cookie cutter exercise that we do, and that's also how we choose the formats that we do. If it cannot be customized to your local market, then it's not the right format for the channel.
Thanks, Shirley. I think Real Housewives is a good testament to that particular point. Coming back to you, Vito, now you've heard from the ladies in terms of local content and how important it is in terms of customizing the content for local. On your side, and the distribution side, though, what challenges does that present you with when you're trying to sell it internationally, if any?
That's a good question. So I like the sentence, local stories. I would maybe add, we are looking for local stories with a global appeal. So In terms of challenges, well, I mean, there's so much content out there. I think that's a little bit of a problem, that people are overwhelmed. So that's why, for me, it's really like the challenge is when I get a new film on board to have like a really straight pitch to in order to make good sale and in order to present it to buyers. Other than that, is I would say like some technical aspects, something like having the right documents in place, having English subtitles, having an English title, everything that you need in order to sell a product globally. That's sometimes you think of every producer should have this, but sometimes it's like these little stupid things that somehow jeopardize like the internationalization of the film.
So in terms of consumption internationally, do you find yourself having to do a lot of dubbing at all, or are the English subtitles kind of the primary mechanism to distribute?
Yeah, it's depending a little bit on the scope on the film. So mostly like a good opening door to have a film on the international carpet, so to say, are film festivals. And these are, I'd say, rather more artistic films. And in this case, mostly we don't need any dubbing because the people also would like to see it like in the original language. If it's something rather more commercial, then a dubbing it's helpful. But that mostly comes in place when a company is interested to broadcast a film, and in most of the cases, then either the broadcaster themselves does the dubbing, or we do it and just recoup the cost afterwards. So it's usually in order to just sell it, B2B side, we don't really need any dubbing in place beforehand.
Okay, thank you. We've just been joined by Monde Twala. He's the SVP of Editorial and GM of Paramount Africa. Welcome, Monde, to the panel. Monde is also a rock star. I see he's got his swag. He brought his swag and straight to the stage. Welcome, Monde. We'll get straight into it, Monde. Maybe give the audience a sense of what your core role is at Paramount at the moment.
There we go.
The mic's on. Hello. Sorry, I'm late. I'm Africa. I look after the Paramount business across the continent. Obviously, we've been based here. In fact, we celebrated 20 years. As a brand in the market, having launched channels like MTV.
Monde, just hold 1 second.
Okay.
I think I'm going to change your mic.
There we go. I thought so. There we go. Apart from that portfolio, obviously we've got a few pillars to our business. Content is obviously at the center of everything we do. We also produce locally. We probably produce close to about 450 hours of local content. Part of that, I also look after the BT portfolio across all markets outside the US. So in the UK, we're producing. In Brazil, we're producing. So every other market we're in, we obviously have to localize, which is amazing. It's a great part of being an international global business that has reach. Where we invest, we obviously work in kind of then working new models to obviously monetize and amortize our investment locally. So distribution is a big part of our business.
Thank you, Monde. And just for the audience, between Monde, Shirley, and Lala, these are three legends in South African entertainment in terms of producing content, working on different sides of the production and broadcasting equation. And Monde touched on something very important. They spoke about the business models. When I meet with producers, quite often I find that they don't really understand completely the different business models that play and that are possible to get their content. Now, on Paramount's side, just of late, if I'm not mistaken, they've ushered, I think, a new era of kind of content development where they have partnerships now potentially in play with your partners or your colleagues here. Monde, maybe touch on that a little bit in terms of how those business models work.
I think on our part, obviously, we produce across multiple genres, whether it's documentaries, novellas, dramas, sitcoms. We've got an amazing women's boxing drama that's currently in the market. And we explore various models, so from, I think the days of, Lala will tell you, the days of commissioning are long gone, because they've got, obviously we all got economic challenges. And the best way we make it work is to partner either with production partners or we partner with ourselves as platforms, and we window content. So you'll see a lot of some of my telenovelas that we've done over the years are sitting on free-to-air. We've partnered with Showmax on a number of, on our sitcom Black Tax, which sits on Showmax. You'll see a lot of our content is also sitting on Netflix. So there's different models in terms of co-funding initiatives and then taking advantage of how we then window across the different platforms, be it free-to-air, SVOD, AVOD, including, to be honest, even some of the other linear players in the same pay TV space as us.
Cool stuff, Monde. So for Shirley and Lala, starting with you, Shirley, the same question. What are the key business models that have come to the fore in the last 12 months that are different from previous years at MultiChoice?
Just to add on what Monde has said, we've also found that we are licensing more content, regardless of the source. So you are licensing for your strategy as opposed to not licensing from your competitor because it's your competitor. It's what does your channel need? Does that content exist and is it open for licensing? Many producers go out and make their own content, find their own funding, and they come to us with a finished product. And we are always open to speak about those business models because we wouldn't have commissioned that concept. It's fresh, it's different, it's something that we had not kind of brought to the fore. And sometimes commissioning can be a bit prescriptive. Producers will come and pitch concepts that are already on air or that we've done before. They're not fresh because they believe we want more of the same thing, and that's not always the case. So licensing is a big business model for us. And you also know we also do co-productions, especially for our premium market. And again, that's just finding the right partners. And what my colleague said this morning with co-productions is we will not go into a co-production if the story doesn't resonate with our audiences. So that comes first.
So that box is still important.
Absolutely. There's no point us investing in a piece of content that is tailor-made for a British market or French market. It needs to resonate with us here in South Africa and in Africa. And in that way, we then work together to make sure that the story does travel internationally.
Cool stuff. Same thing for you, Lala. I know there's obviously a range of business models, also because you have a different platform now also. How would that work for you?
Yeah, I think what we have to appreciate, I don't know which one. Thank you. I think what we have to appreciate is that the landscape has changed. It's now about the business of content. Each and every one of us, whether you're the producer, you're the distributor, you're the marketer, it's actually about the business of content. So SABC is 85 years old, so you can only imagine, and I'm sure each of you who've had an experience with the SABC have been a little to quite frustrated with how it is that we work. We're quite highly regulated, and that's one of the things we've been working on. Because what we want to do and want to be is to become an attractive broadcaster and partner, business partner, in fact. So I'm proud to say, as of the last month, our policy has been updated. It was quite a grueling process.
Loosened a bit.
Quite loosened. But really what we were aiming to do is that, exactly that, is a number one of the pillars is partnerships. That you can come in, and you know that our biggest asset is our airtime. So this policy says we can even go down to looking at sharing our revenue on our revenue. So it really means that the producer, the broadcaster, we can really come in because I believe that we've got different audiences. Monte and I were having a conversation, and they've got a telenovela, and it would be fresh to air for free to air, if you get what I mean. So there are audiences who are hidden deep rural, who I can access that maybe Paramount can't access, and how it is that we then work together. So we are looking at that, but really something that's exciting for me, maybe when I was on the other side of the fence, is looking at slate content. So we're now going to procure for slate, meaning that one producer can be given about 5 projects. Obviously there's terms and conditions to that, But what we're looking at is really to come in and to foster or cultivate a growth of the production company as well. So under our industry development, we're really starting to look at a pipeline, because what we're struggling with, we've got a low amount of females that are producing content, young people. So if we want to tell a youth story for SABC1, we've got to make sure it's being told by young people. And so how do we make sure we cultivate that? So really in terms of models, we're so open, but also that the producers can come and say, this is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And then we can be flexible in how it is that we acquire that content. So it's a very exciting time for us.
Thank you. That's a fantastic answer, Lala, and thank you, Shirley and Monde. Now, that's slightly different. Coming to you, Vito. The question would beg then, okay, if there's less of the commissioning and there's more flexible business models, are producers with great ideas who have a broadcaster potentially on board for broadcast come to Rush Lake for potential pre-sale deal or distribution deal to help their funding?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I mean, they come to us in different stages. And yeah, we don't have any fixed ideas. It's always the question, like, is the project in a stage where we can already help? I think if they come to us, only with, first script, it's a little bit too early. So I think it's always, for us, it's good when the project has I would say a certain shape already. So one financing partner on board, one broadcaster on board, maybe like a couple of talents, key crew, so that that you can see the shape of how it's going to look like at the end, and not something that's going to be finished, like in 5 years or so. So then, we have more or less an idea how it's going to look like and what we can do with it. And then I think it's always we try to match the expectations of the filmmaker, so to say. So if they have the same vision and we have the same vision, then we could come together. If not, we usually don't reject. We say just maybe come back to us at a later stage, so to say.
Okay, and just one follow-up question to that. When you're looking at it, is it just scripted or is it unscripted, factual, and scripted?
So it's scripted. I would say at the moment it's like we do like 80% feature films, 20% series.
Okay. Thank you for that. I know we are running out of time. So just very quickly as a roundup, each of the broadcasters were at the table today. Also, their models have changed slightly and their platforms have changed and expanded into different areas. It's not always public knowledge, but I'll ask them to shed some light on some of that. And starting with Monde. Monde, just in terms of Paramount, it's now Paramount. Just explain to the audience how Paramount's model over the last few years has changed and diversified onto digital platforms also.
I think before I answer that question, I want to bring it home a little bit more in terms of just the question on what Africa wants. So if you look at us as Africans, we are a very diverse market, very diverse in every element of diversity, and storytelling then becomes a very central piece that is a way that we can leverage the power of creativity, the power of content, to make sure that we showcase the best of us, which is as an African market. I always look at the rainbow, and I say, wow, the rainbow has, amazing colors, and depending on your taste, depending on your preference, you can pick red, green, yellow, you name it. And I think that's exactly what Africa wants. Africa wants diversity in content, diversity in story, and that then creates these multiple different, challenges that we have, which are opportunities actually, because now you can tell a story that travels. I think as a South African market, we still need to make sure we tell more stories that travel. But at the center of it is culture, because people create culture, and you can already see that the market is, like Lala says, the market is shifting. Back in the 80s, dubbing was quite popular. It fell off. We didn't dub as much. But dubbing is coming back because it's helping us. An example on Nickelodeon, we dubbing all our content. So Dora, SpongeBob. You can now find Dora SpongeBob in Afrikaans, in English. That's a way of us amortizing content, but also addressing a need in the market for language, for local language content. If you look at our novellas, our dramas, multilingual. They're all multilingual. But all that does, back to regulation also with Lala's side, the challenge on the regulatory side is that you have local content quotas. But local content quotas do limit the ability for free-to-air players to actually on-sell their content to other markets. So we back into that. So that's why regulation then becomes also quite important. Back to then your question, as Paramount, obviously we're a global business. We're in every other market I can think of. We produce from centrally, so we've got global formats, global IP, that we then try and replicate in different markets, especially on the reality side. Formats like Survivor, those are Paramount formats, but they've been done in multiple countries. We've just done Love and Hip Hop South Africa last year. We're about to do Love and Amapiano, and then the following year we'll be doing Love and Afrobeat. So we are localizing our formats. There is more and more. You look at the roast. We're about to launch the roast on Comedy Central in a couple of weeks, couple of hours actually.
I actually had a roast. I actually had a roast on Saturday evening, but it was cured with a barbecue sauce. And,
Oh, wow.
Good luck to you. So I think in answering that question, our business is really expanding. We're a global business, but we are an IP-led business. So we create IP, and we're looking for new IP, but the IP has to have legs to travel. So it has to rate, so it has to have that audience appeal that I spoke to from a cultural, that geocultural perspective. At the same time, it has to have legs to be sellable and for other markets and other consumers. And I think we need to do that. We need to open up the market a lot more and stop being so essay-centric in our creativity.
Cool. Thanks, Monde. Thank you for that. It was quite a detailed, measured answer. Going to MultiChoice and to Shirley. MultiChoice works across multiple markets, right? So even when choosing for local, you have access to data and information from West Africa, East Africa, and do the same trends apply? How much of that information do you use in what you do every day?
The same trends do not apply because, as Monde said, Africa is quite a melting pot, but the foundation is the same. It is the authenticity that is very important. It is the pride that we instill in our cultures, in our languages, celebrating our songs, our music in an authentic way. So you service the market that you are in first in the most authentic way possible. But we also have crossovers where, for example, we will take a story Bible of a telenovela from Nigeria and we adapt it to the South African market. Vice versa, we've adapted The River into the African market, and we did the same with Gomorrah. And then Sibongile and the Dlaminis, which is on Mzansi Wetu, is an adaptation of one of our telenovelas from Africa. So the foundation is the same. It's really to customize to who your audience is so that your story is still relatable. And that's a business model that works for us as MultiChoice because we put all our ideas in one pot and all the regions have access to that. That's why we've done OPW outside South Africa and the same for Date My Family. So that sharing of ideas, not being fenced in by the boundary of where you live, but also understanding that as an African people, we have way more in common than we have in the differences. It's really how now you customize it in a relatable way to ensure that the brand is authentic to the culture, and we respect the languages, and we don't, desecrate people's culture, and we don't judge.
Cool. Thank you, Shirley. Moving to you, Lala. Monde mentioned something interesting. Obviously, you have mandate content on your channels, which means you do have limited space to a degree because you've got to meet certain quotas, etc. But you do have a new platform, SABC Plus. What opportunities has that given you and content makers alike?
Indeed, we've got SABC Plus, but maybe to start here is that there's still a huge opportunity on our linear platform. We have about 300 programs on air on any given time. Our budget is 1.3 billion spent on content. We only have 500 of that. So you can imagine we still have a huge gap, which talks to the partnerships that we're quite open to. But when you look at all the content, and I'll come to SABC Plus, but I wanted to share with the producers and the industry, when you look at all the content that we receive a high volume of dramas, and I guess all producers want to come in and do drama. But there's so much space that sits, I'm interested when I hear you speak to entertainment. As the SABC, we get hardly none of those. And our audiences, I was looking at some stats last week, our audiences firstly come in for drama and our soapies, then come in for the news, and then come in for entertainment, and then sports. We don't get any sports documentaries, for example, that get, proposed to us. So there's still so much opportunity, particularly for mandated content. So if you're a producer, I'll give you a show that works really well and was done by a young producer called Roxic. So you can imagine mass market, they need to understand the essence of a toxic relationship. So really simple formats or simple content, but everybody always rushes to go into drama. So I'm just throwing it out there that the only format that works is not only the drama, but that we're really looking for education, children and education. I'm not sure why Monde hasn't come to us with the dubbed children's content, but anyway. All of it.
I think he will
but,
now.
Yeah, but really the opportunity that lies there. I was sitting with someone who trained the Springboks way in deep Eastern Cape, and that's a story to be told. So, I think all of that. But in terms of us and SABC Plus, we've archived and we've showcased all our old content, so you can really go in there and look at what it is that's working. But it is new, and we're quite excited about it. And very soon we'll be launching SABC Plus Originals, which we're quite excited about. So there's a huge opportunity. I don't know, how many of you have SABC Plus? Hey, can you please download SABC Plus? But yeah, we're very excited about it, and what really was exciting for us is when we do have sports content, we sometimes even crash, which was exciting to see that the local market is really, and the mass market is looking forward.
Like Rugby World Cup, for example.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The World Cup really showed for us that, in fact, our audiences have moved and can migrate and are digital. So we're really excited to see how we can entertain them in an innovative way. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Lala. And just in closing, Vito, when you have content to distribute, how important is digital marketing and digital marketing assets that producers give to you? How important is it in your business?
It's a relatively good question. It's relatively important. I think it's something that plays into the mix. So I think at the end of the day, I would say it's someone presents me a film, I think the best say it's a good story in combination with some cast attack. That's always helpful. But I don't know, I have like a personal hate on social media. For me, it's like, I don't know, I just Googled it before for the meeting. So the average person in South Africa spends like something like 4 hours a day on social media.
That's why I'm asking, because the broadcasters are saying, obviously, hyperlocal content is very important, right? So a lot of these big shows build up massive followings locally. And when selling this content, how do you use that to try and create demand on the other side, saying, listen, there's 1 million people engaging with this particular show in Africa. It's very relevant for audiences. Is that a measure to sell?
It's depending. So, I mean, social media numbers, they always help. So it's always, I think it's a good pitch. But at the end of the day, as I said, it's something that plays into the mix. I don't want you purely focusing on numbers, because when you imagine, 70% of the population doing 4 hours like that, then, a post having like 500,000 clicks or whatever is not that much at the end of the day. So, and also, I mean, if there's a big actor and has like a couple of million of followers, if like 99% of them are from the South African market, there's not really like a selling point in order to sell it to Germany, Korea, or wherever. So, yeah, let's say, I can't deny the importance of social media, but I don't try to focus too much about it.
Thank you for that, Vito. And thank you to the panel for all your time and your wonderful answers. I wanted to leave enough time. I know we are running out, but we've got just enough time for some questions. And we're going to open up to the floor. You can just direct the question at whichever person you would like to answer. That's no problem.
I'm not really sure who's the best person to answer this, but you guys spoke a lot about like diverse content in Africa. And what space do you think there is in Africa for queer stories?
For?
Queer stories.
For queer stories. Let's see, who shall we give that question? Let's give that one to Shirley.
I think it's safe to say that some African countries are still not as open as South Africa is in accepting people for who they are. There is still a lot of countries where it's illegal, you can be imprisoned, and people are prosecuted for their sexuality or their gender. South Africa is very privileged in that way that it's almost, it's not even a topic anymore. It's just about, is it a good story and what are the characters? We have a responsibility as storytellers, I believe, to be representative of everybody that's in this continent. It becomes a catch-22 when you have regulatory rules that you have to follow. You've got restrictions on the type of content you can play on certain channels, and we certainly experience that with some of the SADC regions where we can't even play Somizi's show, for example. And Somizi is just there as a person, but we just can't play his show because he is Somizi. So in that respect, there's a lot of work to be done. And I think we have to continue to be the activists as storytellers to kind of, dismiss and I'm looking for the right word, but the stereotype and the fear around it. We are the ones that need to demystify them and still be a platform where all people of genders, race, and sexuality are represented in our stories. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of old-fashioned thinking. There's a lot of hiding behind religion and culture and patriarchy. So it's really all just mushed together in that really high boundary that we have in actually telling those stories.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you for that. Any other questions from the floor to our panelists?
Yes, my name is Tapelo from Auzweke. Thank you, Ms. Lala, for updating the policies. I think last year I spoke about SABC not being accommodative to some of us. Yeah, so I'll have to check them and then I'll get back to you. Another one, Ms. Shirley. I think for me as a producer, I survive mainly on licensing films because I get funding from GFC and AVF, all the other ways, but like commissioning work, I can't get it. So now 2 years ago, MultiChoice, they closed doors for licensing. Then I heard you spoke about licensing. Are the doors open again for us to submit?
For films.
Yeah, for film.
Okay, yeah, sorry, it's very hard to hear you. So the licensing that I was speaking about was more towards our music content. We're getting a lot of submissions of documentaries around music content, the history of South African music. And yes, a few years back, we used to license films, but we were not getting a huge response to that. There wasn't a large number of films that we were getting, and there were also challenges around the passing of QC, the quality of the shows themselves. So it became very unfair of us to expect a producer to go back and re-edit and get things right, and it just became a business model that wasn't viable. So we rested that for a couple of years. We are definitely still open for content. We have a dedicated movie channel in Mzansi Bioskop, and we also have our mother brand, Mzansi Magic. So if it appeals to the mass market and it meets the standards, and of course the price is right, it's something we can definitely have a conversation about.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think that is why I'm advocating for producers out there, QC across the broadcasters, any VOD player, it's exceptionally high standards because a lot of the content now is traveling far beyond just South Africa or local broadcaster. So I would always say to you, try and find a good distributor, and there's one sitting next to me, because what they do is they help get you to the bar of that QC, because they kind of know what the platforms want and what the platforms are willing to accept. So it helps you get there, even at this production stage of your content, because Shirley's correct. After you've made it, to go back and redo that is quite expensive. So if in your initial build of how you're planning to produce or post-produce your series, if you have those notes, it helps you tremendously. And it's good to be in play with the distributor at that very, very early phase. Am I right, Vito?
Yes, exactly.
Says I'm right.
Sivan, if I can add to that, I think the other important piece is just, I think filmmakers, storytellers should be more and more aware of the need and lean in on a little bit of research, guys, and effort on research. Every platform has a different audience strategy. So you might go out and do a beautiful film that looks great and amazing, but it does not engage based on the different target markets we all are looking for. So I think just engage with the broadcasters and just check them out in terms of just what's their audience strategy, what are they looking for, so that you then can come up with creative ideas to solve the problem. Yeah, just wanted to give you that
If I can
feedback.
just pass on to Lala there to add to that.
I'd like to add on that. I think the data-led industry is going to be very important. I was going to say that, Monde, before you raise the research question. We've got to actually watch the platforms. I think producers also come and say, because you've never done this before, or something, and you know that you've kind of done like 6 iterations of them. So I think the understanding of the strategy of that broadcast is really one of the critical arsenals that the producer needs to have, so that we can then start to create for the future. Because what tends to happen is we keep going back and doing the same thing, or being proposed the same kind of content, and then it seems as though there's a high rate of rejections. But actually, we've seen it before. What else can we do? We've just tried. There was a queer question that came earlier. So even as a country, are we ready to see certain things? How do we want to package them? We tried to do a wife swap in South Africa. We bought the format and we thought, you go into like KwaZulu, they're like, what? Do what with who? Why? So it was really difficult to get those families in our situation. But when we tweaked it slightly and made it more an educational show, we started having families more open. So it started last week. I hope you watch it. But it's really an intricate exploration of the family dynamics in South Africa. So you can only imagine how different families live and exist. But those kind of things is what the room can help us to tell those stories in their absolute finesse and nuanced nature, because what we're struggling with is a rough brush of almost everything. There's women we speak to that are like, in a divorce, I'm happy my husband can keep the kids, but we haven't seen those on TV yet. So there are so many things we're kind of brushing over. I always say we're stuck on the evil black woman right now. And I don't know if all black women are evil, but we're kind of like stuck there now. But we need so many nuanced stories, so just that reflection when we talk diversity of story, plurality of voice, what do we actually mean?
Yeah, I think right at the start we did say this is a very layered conversation. There is no one simple answer. Broadcasting and content making is a science. And it's a science you've got. The better you understand it, the better your cadence with everybody sitting here would be, I think, in the future. Are there any other questions from the audience? Is that it? Oh, there's one more. We'll take one more question at the back, and then we'll close.
Hi. I just wanted to find out, you were saying earlier on that the budgets are getting smaller. What is the future of our industry if the budgets keep getting smaller? And where do you guys see maybe a silver lining where the budgets will be bigger?
Okay, I'll start with the answer, but I'll pass it on to the panel. every time there's a challenge presented in our industry, and budgets are a challenge, it also presents an opportunity, right? In the old days, I mean, if you go back 15, 20 years, it was definitely a broadcaster-led business. But it has changed. It's become a platform-led combination with advertiser-led business now. So there's more opportunities and more people looking at content from different ways. So you've actually got more opportunities to speak to more people now. And I'll start with Lala and we'll work downwards. But I think everybody will have a different model that applies to their platform. Lala, over to you.
It's been a very difficult time for the SABC where financially we've been very strained. Our reality is that our mandated content is not funded. We've just put before the portfolio committee just last week, and I don't know if you saw it in the news yesterday, but the chairperson of the portfolio committee is going to be re-looking at the SABC bill. We need our content, the mandated content, to be funded. We also were very challenged with the TV licenses that were not being paid. If you think about it,
What's the percentage, Lala? I think 30%, 35%?
We're sitting on 15% of people who pay
15%.
their TV license. It's 270 a month, it's 20 Rand to get the content. And that it's a heavy burden for a national broadcaster to not have the ability to produce content. So, Tongai, that question is very important in terms of, the lessening of the budgets. But as Sivan says, there's an opportunity. But from an SABC side, we are really pushing back to government to say, this is a national broadcaster. It needs to be funded. What are the opportunities? But we as well are looking at partners. We're in huge talks with other government partners to see how we can then get their budgets to do what we need to do.
And some of them are here at this conference.
Some of them are here in this conference.
Over to you,
I think
Shirley.
they're standing at the back. I don't know if that's the back.
I think for us as MultiChoice, we have been very deliberate in ensuring that every fiscal we increase the number of hours we produce. With that being said, not everything is a high budget. So for example, Shaga Ilembe was a special project which took 6 years to fund. You have to be deliberate and ensure that you budget according to the creative. Big budget doesn't always mean it's a great creative. And our commissioning teams are very clever in assisting producers in ensuring that the product we deliver is of the perfect quality and the perfect content. Because I'm sure we've all watched a movie that wasn't shot with 4K, but the story was excellent. So where are those concepts that we invest in as an entry-level producers, and where do we invest that has the biggest ROI for us? And for us is our telenovelas. So our telenovelas will have the bigger budget, but they have more pressure to pay for themselves. The reality shows that they vary in the budget from low, and then obviously the international formats are a little bit more expensive. The biggest reality format we do is Big Brother. And if you know that format, you can imagine the budget for that. So we start from the base and we work all the way to the top. And it has to fit in with that strategy, again, of local content hours. But the ROI is also very important because you can't continue to invest in something that doesn't pay for itself. There's no business that can sustain itself like that.
I got you. Thank you, Shirley. For Monday, I just want to say something. I want to preface this question before this because some years ago, Monday in his previous life, in his previous job, set a challenge, and I was at Endemol at the time, and he had a slot. He had some slot challenges and had very low budgets. And I said to him, Monday, give us the challenge, and we'll solve it. But those were extremely low budget shows. But Monday, rating-wise, it rated as well as some of the bigger shows, right?
No, absolutely. I was going to say to that question, is there ever a budget? Is there never enough budget? Even Hollywood doesn't have enough budget. I think it boils down to what you want to achieve. It boils down to, the data, the market study, the art and the science, bringing it together. So just being measurable with your project, So sometimes you have a time slot. Just back to what you say, Sivan, you have a time slot, you have a limited number, and then you think of, I'm going to turn this slot around and create momentum. slate. I think Lala spoke about a slate. The importance of slates in any platform is because then you can invest with a longer, runway. It's not just like you have 13 half hours, you put it in a slot, then what do you do the rest of the year? Now that's why your audiences then run away to other platforms, etc., etc. You have to have consistency in your schedule, in your content strategy. You need consistency so that you manage seasonality. So that's kind of how we all manage platforms, whether you're streaming, pay TV. I think the only platform that's got the best model right now is like YouTube. They don't pay you for the content. You upload the content on YouTube. It's user generated. It's the only platform that's kind of got its own sustainable model. On our side, really, we don't have the best of budgets. That's why we then explore, advertiser-funded content. These days, we're getting a lot of brands that want to drive product. Yes, they want to drive product, but they're driving product because their consumer base wants to be enabled. Look at a bank. Just finished a campaign with Standard Bank that did an amazing campaign on MTV Base for 2 months, trying to obviously drive awareness around financial awareness for the youth. Standard Bank is slightly older bank. They're not banking young people. They don't have the cool factor. They came to us. We created an amazing user-generated content, multimedia content play. The concept lived across YouTube, linear, and it was actually YouTubers who also come on our channel. If you look at someone like Lasizwe, we did a reality show on Lasizwe for MTV. We did about 4 or 5 seasons. He was a YouTuber that we used and converted this multimedia cycle. It's one of the top rating shows we've had, and also revenue generating shows we've had. So and there's all these opportunities that I think are now open. But always think, when it comes to budget, always think the model and always think multi-platform. How can I commercialize and monetize my concept across multiple platforms and multiple regions? That's how we play.
Thank you, Monde. And I want to thank the panel once again for your time. Monde, Shirley, Lala, Vito. And thank you to Framework MIP Africa for giving us a chance to share this esteemed panel's knowledge with you, and hopefully there's great insight. I'd like to give everyone a big hand for their time, and thank you too. And enjoy the rest of your MIP Africa.